when it comes to the education sector, a lot of things have transpired over over the many years since independence, and we are slowly clocking into getting to celebrating 60 years of independence in Uganda, and so that's why we are talking about it today, as well as it aligning with the fact that today is International Teachers' Day. So, Daphne.
Yes.
What do you think when you think about education in Uganda? What comes to mind?
Well, I look at how far we have come from when, before the colonialists, we used to write on banana leaves.
Is that true?
Yes, wow. I asked, and actually, the reason why I asked about it was there was a school I went to, not so far, here in Kawempe, and they were writing on banana leaves, like green banana leaves, and then they use sticks. If you haven't seen this, you're not a Ugandan.
Doesn't the banana leaf get
No,
torn?
that's why they use sticks, the ones that are used for brooms, but sweeping compounds, the brooms that sweep compounds. So they're not they're sharp, but if you use it properly, knowing that it's your book, definitely you use it properly.
It's your paper.
Yeah, so I had to find
out.
Damage
your paper.
Yes, I had to find out from my mother, and I was told that many of the schools that didn't have materials and everything, they would use those banana leaves. And then there were also schools where you'd get boards. You see how there were blackboards in school, so you get your own board, a small board. And then they would require you to turn it into black using the potato leaves. Yes, I'm educating Bruno. You're gonna pay me. Yes, some of us are old. We've been around. So like you would, you get those potato leaves, and you smash charcoal, and then you will use them to make your board black. And then now you can easily write with your chalk. So looking at what is happening today, today you cannot take your child to school unless you have a rota trim, strictly rota trim. So there was a time when they would ask for Pix Fair rims, but now they want rota trim. You see that we have transitioned. There are books, different books that have come up, and it's been a journey.
Yeah, and we don't need to use sticks anymore. We don't need to use banana plantations anymore. Yes. We can use chalk and we can use blackboards. But apart from that, I heard that you have an interesting history for us when it comes to education since 1962.
Oh, yes. Well, the education development has been a process from one step to another, right from when Uganda, got its independence. We know that Uganda got independence in October on the 9th, that is 1962 for you that doesn't know. And there are so many challenges that came with, independence. Of course, many people were decrying colonialism, they want to be, they don't want people over them telling them what to do and how things should be run. But then, with the whites going out of Uganda, so many challenges came.
The question was, would we handle?
So many challenges came. We actually realized that we needed them after they were gone.
It's like sending your enemy out of your home.
And then you're like, I wish they had stayed.
My friend, not my enemy.
So many challenges came, and the government expected the education system to be able to help in solving these challenges. And one of the challenges that we had by 1962, we had very few qualified personnel to work both in government departments and other companies. Numerous jobs were created, that is around 1961 and 1962, partly by the departure of Europeans and Asian civil servants and the teachers who did not want to be under the leadership of Africans. Just like Africans were saying, we don't want whites ruling over us. Also, we had the whites and Asians who said, no, me to be under an African boss, I'd rather go back to my country. And that brought a challenge for us. And other jobs that were created by the many ministries in government that had not been there before created gaps. We didn't have qualified personnel. When you look at how offices were run during colonialism, we had whites everywhere. You'd find them in the government offices, of course. find them in the hospitals. We know how all the hospitals that we have, even Mengo was actually founded by a white. So you find which was the first hospital in Uganda. Only whites and Asians were being entrusted to do these things. They were qualified. They were brought from Britain.
Managers.
Yes, they were the managers. And so you find that with their going, there was a gap. Britain had sent excessive qualified workers to Uganda and to other colonies in Africa. And of course, we had, like I said, state-registered sisters in hospitals. You'd find only sisters in most of the hospitals here in Uganda. Office secretaries used to be wives of the British officers that were working in Uganda, or unmarried ladies that could not get jobs in Britain would come here and be secretaries, while Africans were only being maybe assistants or cleaners. Yes, so there was that gap. It was a great challenge, honestly, when you're used to things being run. Imagine now we have a camera here and it's run by a white, and then it goes out. Then you don't know what to do with it.
And I think that gap still exists today, especially in terms of education, because I read an article that was stating that at that time, the education that Ugandans were receiving was to enable them become assistants to the British and the Asians that were managing institutions at the time. And so one of the gaps, that gap was exposed because when the British left and they were no longer
qualified.
People were not qualified enough. And until the curriculum was changed of recent, we have been in that same mode. I don't know if it has changed, because if you look at how our some of our institutions have run, you can see that there is a gap when it comes to management. That some Ugandans especially are not good at managing institutions, and that goes to show that something in the education system needs to change. The curriculum had to change, because at that time the curriculum was set up to train assistants or people who are going to look for jobs, and not people to think and have leadership qualities and be able to manage institutions.
Definitely. That's why you see the government thought that the education system should do something about this. They should train, people that are able to stand up and take up these roles in government and even, in teaching. Now they needed teachers to teach teachers. So it was a very, very big gap and challenge right there. Then we also had challenge number 2, which was developing economic activities to increase production so that the government services could be carried out. Though the economy was not very bad, that is during the independence time, 1962, it needed to be developed further and even faster. So this also required qualified people to be produced by the education system. So you can see that education had a lot to do. It not only had to produce people to work in these offices, but also the economy needed to be helped. But if you don't know how to do accounting, how will you develop the economy? So you see, that was the challenge also thrown at the education system. And then number 3, because there were majorly 3 challenges actually that Uganda was being faced, or the government of Uganda after independence, was the need to give confidence to Ugandans that they were capable of solving their own problems and that they shouldn't feel shy or unequal to the tasks of sustaining their independence. Well, one aspect of missionary and colonial education, like Bruno was saying, it was not giving confidence to its students. It would show them that you can only be an assistant. You can take after one greater than you. So many students could not stand on their own to discuss issues, to see how to maneuver through problems. They were always educated to take positions only to help what the other one couldn't do. If it's to remove a paper, they would remove it for the civil servants that were mainly whites, that is European and Asian. And also teachers could only help in carrying chalk around. Oh, so bad. And yet they were not trained to be fully fledged controllers of things. Now, this must have made many Ugandans feel inferior. And in the effort to change this, actually, there were 2 slogans that were developed to help give confidence to Ugandans. And one was the creation of the African identity, discovering who are you, much as you are an African. Can you be on your own? Just like you can eat without support. You can do things.
But if that was the case, why is it that some of us who went to school in some years had to learn about Saskatchewan, Canadian prairies?
I know.
Where's the African identity there?
Yes, that's why there was a commission that was brought later to see that these changes, though, Africans, we love, like I told you the other day, we even adopted English words and Lugandalize it. We cannot have, people don't want to be totally independent. So yes, there was creation of African identity and the development of the African personality. Number one, if you get to know who you are, much as you are an African, then what is your African personality? Like, I'm resilient, I'm like Bruno, I push forward, I can do this. Africans have been known to be very resilient, by the way.
That's true.
I remember when Corona was coming to Africa, some interesting human beings say that Africans are going to die like cockroaches. But then they later found out that Africans don't go.
The Bible says that God puts our enemies to shame.
Yes.
The enemies of Africa were greatly put to shame.
I know.
Time because
everyone was waiting for us to die.
Were waiting for Africans to drop like flies. But fortunately and unfortunately for them, it never happened because God protected us.
Definitely.
So you're right. We are very
that's why you see
resilient.
it was important for them to be reminded that yes, you have an African identity, but you also have that African personality of not giving up. Lessons and speeches to students all the time had to harm those two ideologies. Unfortunately, it worked. We saw so many Africans actually even fly out to study and even to work abroad.
Maybe that's why we had a lot of uprisings in terms of politics back in the day. Someone would come up and there were very resilient leaders in that day where they would say, this regime has caused problems, let's come and change things in this country. I don't know if we have that same resilience today, but
at least we see where it's coming from.
We see where it's coming from, and that was very much needed in that time because, like you said, there was a very big gap that was left by the leaving of the colonial masters, and so we had big shoes to fill.
Yes.
And when it comes to independence, and this is a general thought when it comes to independence, I know from articles I've read and some of the stories on independence that I've seen that the British tried as much as they could when it came to handing over to
smooth transition.
To the smooth transition.
Someone used that term recently. Smooth transition.
I have
power.
a sneaky feeling from, of course, what the incidents that have happened since independence, that for many of the leaders who were starting to manage these institutions, that for them it was a thing of, I'm in power. And I might be wrong, but I think that they were at that time they really didn't understand, or they understood but they were not willing to put the effort to fill in the big gap that was left by the British. Now there are many people who did an amazing job during the time, but again, after Obote won, then the presidents that followed after up to that instability was a sign that maybe some of the leaders, some of them, not all of them, at that time were focused on being in power.
In power.
The British have
I'm
gone.
in power.
Now it's my turn. It's our turn as Africans, and actually our turn as the leaders at that time. So if there was more thought put into the education system, and if those gaps were closed very quickly, then things would have been easier. But thankfully, we have the grace of God, and God brought us leaders who managed to change our education
Definitely. When you look at the government, it was really trying to work around to see how do we deal with this. Okay, fine, we know there are challenges, like we have seen in there were gaps. Now what do we do? How do we change our education to see that we have qualified people, to see that people know that they can do this? In 1963, the Ugandan government appointed the Cultural Education Commission, that is to review the system along the recommendations of the Debussy Education Committee of 1952. Well, the Council Education Commission set up a new structure of education which goes as follows. Well, number one, there was primary school course to last 7 years instead of 6. Well, earlier,
That would have.
there was 6 years.
Why did we
Study
do all
6
those
years.
7 years?
6 years and you're out. But
And that's the same thing in Kenya. And I remember when we were young, my friends,
Yes.
when we were in primary, would tell me, but why aren't we doing like what Kenya does? And we just go up to P6 and we go up to secondary. Why do we have to do the full 7
I
years?
said if we are to get qualified people, they need to stay in school longer. And then I have seen most of my friends, recently, there is even kindergarten, there is play school, and you find a child is in school for 12
There's
years.
pre-kindergarten,
Just primary, you can
there is-
imagine.
yes.
Yes. Which is really absurd. And I think when you take so long in school, somehow you get tired. You get tired. I think that 6 should have remained. But anyways, the course was to last 7 years. That's why we have primary 1 to primary 7 as we can see it today. Forgetting about kindergarten. Those are people just wanting to spend money. And number 2, they had the junior secondary section of 2 years, which was abolished. Also the farm schools, the rural trade schools, the home craft centers, and secondary modern schools were abolished and turned into academic secondary schools. I am seeing this come back in the new curriculum. We had farm schools, we had the rural trade schools, home craft, but this is what we're doing now in our new curriculum, isn't it, for the lower secondary?
And I like that I like that because that means there's specialized training. I mean, I remember when I was in senior 1,
Yes.
we did 23 subjects. I used to ask myself, why are we doing all these 23 subjects?
I was studying about the French
but-
Revolution.
Exactly. You're doing 23 subjects, some of them. So you do woodwork and metalwork at the same time. Now I know it's good because senior 1, they're giving you all the options. And as you continue to go through senior 2, senior 3, senior
Yes.
4, you find out which subject you like the most. Well, for those that are non-compulsory,
Yes.
and then you choose. But the point I'm making is that when it comes to having a particular skill that you will use in the future, you need specialization, that
Yes.
you need to have a fewer subjects, which is now in the new curriculum.
Yes.
In that
They take you to baking.
Yes.
You
And
do
you
woodwork.
specialize
Yes.
and you know, okay, this is a skill that I'm going to build further for a long time. So I like the fact that used to happen and that it's returning. That
Yes.
you can specialize in certain skills and specifically certain skills that are good for our country. Because when
Yes.
you look at farm schools, that is particularly good for our country because we are a country that is our economy solely, not solely, but majorly relies
on
on
agriculture.
agriculture. So
Yes.
that is really good to see that it's returning.
Oh yes, it is something that happened before under the Cultural Education Commission. Then number 3, we had the senior secondary school section that is O level to last 4 years. So you know where this started. When you are studying from senior 1 to senior 4, it started way back in 1963. Then also the senior secondary school section that is A level was to last 2 years, which is senior 5 and senior 6. But this was too ambiguous. When you go through, oh my goodness. But I
Why?
love that
Why
we
is
have
it as
adopted. I'm still telling you.
Oh,
I love that we
history teacher.
that we maintained at least those that were less ambiguous. Yes, 2 years I think is good enough. And then after that, one was expected to go to tertiary education. At that time, it was strictly Makerere University, and later other universities followed through. Then when you're coming from Makerere University, you are supposed to go into a teacher training college for grade 3 teachers with all-level secondary school education, or teacher training colleges for grade 2 teachers with primary school education had to be phased out. Well, if you were not able to go to the university after senior 4, you could easily join a teachers training college. I remember there was a time they were telling me, Daph, we may not have many for university, maybe you're going to a teacher's. I was like,
I think you would make a great teacher.
No, but you
Now
see,
you would have a public holiday today.
which I'm not able to enjoy. So then, mostly, if you were not going to university to choose something else, you were strictly going to a teachers training college. And this was good because they were looking for people, that would teach others, and so they can have as many to qualify. And those that were getting from primary school and straight into the teacher training colleges were abolished. Like, you are still half-baked.
You need to
Stay
be
longer.
in the oven for a
Stay
longer
longer
time.
in the oven. Oh, yes. So those ones were removed. And we had technical colleges to be joined after O-level. If you are to join a technical college, and I think this is still happening now, when you have a certificate for O-level, you can easily join a technical college. We had Chambogo Technical College. And I think...
Is that where you were going to go?
No, they wanted to send me to Kasese. I refused. I didn't want to be a teacher. I would be here crying foul. So yes, and then we also had technical institutes to be joined after the completion of the course in the technical college. You come out of the college, then you go to an institute. This is too long. Too long, yes. But right now, actually, when you come from O-level, you can go to our technical college and you're good to start working. But then they would say from a technical college, you're going to our technical institute. Then we also had agriculture colleges to be joined after O-level. If you came out of O-level and you were not able to go for A-level, you could join an agriculture college, and also district farm institutes to be joined after the completion of the course in the agriculture college. You come out of the college, then you go to the farm because you want agriculture. So they were trying to see that they leave no stone unturned. What do you think of that?
I think that was good.
Yes.
Because remember, during Talk of the Town, we were talking about how teachers need to be skilled. They need refresher courses. So if they were going to build an education system that was fruitful and beneficial to the development of the country, then they needed teachers who are skilled, who are well trained to teach the next leaders of well, I was going to say tomorrow, but of 1963 onwards.
So to the 1990s.
So I that was good, and it's good that they changed the parameters about who would be able to go to the teaching college, that you needed to attain more education before you joined a teachers training college. And at that time, they were the most prestigious schools in Uganda because teachers were it's hard to see how teachers these days are disrespected, but at that time teachers were very respected professionals in the community, because at that time people either wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. So and teacher was amongst the top on that list. So that was a good thing, and it helped boost the pride in the education sector.
Yeah, you know that really you went through it.
Yeah, you went through it and you were well trained. And even for the students, it helped give you confidence that your teacher was well trained enough to give you the knowledge and the skills you needed to help your country grow. Because at that time, these were our forefathers. They were growing our nation that had just been birthed.
Well, one thing that I found interesting in our education history is the fact that for those that were not able to join university would go on to get jobs and train on job. Now, this is not something we find nowadays.
It's there, but
it's not something.
It's by the grace of God that you find
hard.
yourself in that
because
place.
You go to a job and they want to know, okay, where have you worked? For how long? Okay, what skills did you really attain? And I have realized that actually the best employees that I have encountered are those that learn on job. Because with our education system, especially now, people are doing more of cramming than really. The other day I was holding an interview with somebody and I was asking them, what did you learn? And they were telling me midwifery. I'm like, you studied midwifery. What did you learn? People have not come to a place of differentiating between learning and studying.
But do you know why that is? It's because of the education system that has been in place before this new curriculum was released. That education system, which was set up in the early 1960s, was set up to ensure, actually, it was set up by the colonialists, but it was modified by the Ugandan government at that time. So at
Which
that
is
time,
really-
the colonialists set up that system to train people who are going to become assistants, people who are going to get jobs. And that was modified by the government of Uganda at that time, that they were training people to go out and get jobs
And even be job
lead to the
creators.
development of the
Yes.
country. Now at that time, because the population was not as much as it is now, the jobs were available. As long as you finish school, as long as you finish university. I remember my father and my grandparents keep telling me at that time,
Yes.
as long as you finish university, you were guaranteed a job.
A job,
government
yes, it
job,
was a
well paying,
guarantee.
with
Yes.
a house, by the way.
Oh,
They used
yes.
with a house, and the provisions and the amenities were good. And unfortunately, as the population kept expanding and the education system kept in that mode of training people to go and get jobs, it became more difficult for the two to align, because now we are 45 million people, and you're not going to expect that there'll be a job. Well, it's government's job to ensure that the unemployment rate is down.
Yes.
But it's hard to say that there'll be a job for all the 45 million people. What does that call for? That calls for people, for entrepreneurship, for people to become job creators. And people have not been trained to be job creators. They have been trained and educated to be job seekers.
Yes.
So that needs to change. And for Uganda, it's a good sign now that we are one of the most entrepreneurial countries in the world.
Oh, wow.
In terms of
That's
people start up businesses in Uganda. Unfortunately, many of those businesses do not excel well, but it's because of, again, an improper education. So if I like this new curriculum, because it has
Yes.
changed that aspect, that it's not just about cramming and passing exams so that you can go and get a job,
Yes.
but you have to understand what you are learning, so that you have enough knowledge and you have enough practical skills to enable you to go and become a strong tool of change and transformation, or a job creator in the market.
Well, when you talk about people being more practical, being an employer, I have seen so many people who actually come with very good grades, and yet they have no idea at all in what they were supposed to do. And yet someone comes with, say, bad grades or so, and then you give them chance maybe to train 2-3 weeks, and they're good on the job. So I am thinking this is something that we're also supposed to look into, and I think this new curriculum is going to help us a lot. The students are taken from class and then taken on ground. If it is to cut the frog, you're going to cut the frog, dissect it, know what's inside, instead of waiting for those higher stages of learning, and then that's when you start for 2 years only.
I used to see some classes in some schools, of course I won't mention any
Yes.
names, where there would be around 30 students around on the table as the teacher is dissecting the frog. So they didn't have enough resources, enough frogs for all the students to dissect. So you just see the students watching as the teacher is dissecting the frog. But that is not proper education.
Yeah,
because
no,
it needs
they'll
to
have
be,
to go
it needs to be
and-
practical, it needs to be hands-on.
Yes, it really does. And yeah, I think I have seen many strive on job, like I was telling you, and we have seen our education transition, and I know we are headed for greater heights, even knowing that now it's more on merit.
It's more on merit than
More on merit.
on,
You cannot hide behind your
on how
papers.
professional you are as a crammer.
And I'm seeing a possibility of us having more job creators, because if we are training students on bakery, agriculture practices, we're going to see so many people come out and they're able to employ themselves and many others if we go on like this. Because by then, when you look at the 1960s, we had only 28 government-aided schools, and later they increased to 73 by 1970. Right now, now we have so many schools out there, and I am seeing very few actually foreigners in our classes, very few foreigners in our companies, very few even in the government places. So I think really post-independence, we are doing well. We have taken the resilience cry and we know who we are.
And the education sector, of course, needed resilience, especially
Yes.
in the 1970s, because there was a lot of turmoil when it comes to governmental change and war, and of course the 1980s as well. So the education system was greatly affected as schools were damaged, and children were not able to go to school because of the wars that happened. But with the coming in of the NRM government, things started to change as there was institutional reform in the education sector. Now, one of the things that the government, 1990s moving forward,
Yes.
decided to do was to ensure that there's easy access to education for all, and for all means both those who can manage to pay school fees, and then those who are not so privileged, so that there's no inequality in society. So one of the things that was introduced in January 1997, universal primary education started, and that's so a lot of underprivileged families were enabled in terms of sending their children to school under the universal primary education, and then later on universal secondary education was introduced as well. And so children, even in families that don't have enough money to pay for school fees, these children can go and get the education they need because of such programs like UPE and USE. And then there are things like the introduction of a students loan scheme, and these are programs that are enabling students to better themselves in terms of education. And then there's the rehabilitation of the already existing schools. Yesterday, during the news, we saw that there's a school that is News at 8, which is every day, by the way. There's a school that is being renovated, and it's good to see it's being renovated by the Church of Uganda, and it's good to see that those renovations and rehabilitations are happening, because those schools are pillars of our society. And so now we stand at a new curriculum is where we have arrived, and
Yes.
it's good. I like the fact that government and the Ministry of Education took it upon themselves to review our education system and the curriculum, because the old curriculum was starting to become a drag.
Yes.
And I don't think it was adding more to the society, because yes, a lot of people were finishing school. By the way, another positive outcome of the educational reforms that happened since independence, especially after the institution of the NRM regime, was the fact that a lot of a lot of women, a lot of girls
Yes.
were able to get an education. So the girl child in times past was not able to get the education that was needed, because in tradition at that time the girl was supposed to remain at home, and so there was the need for a cultural shift in terms
Yes.
of mindset. Parents had to release their girls to go and study.
Even the
and
government
then-
came out to help, with the
Yes.
cut-off points.
with the
and
cut-off
then
points. And now we're at a place where I remember I read out a report some time back saying that there are more girls in schools when it comes to university, when it comes to secondary as well, and
Yeah,
then
even the officers
and
out there, yes.
many of the best performing students are girls. So that is something good that we have also seen as per the institutional reforms in the education sector.
Well, something that I would want us to talk about also, have you heard of homeschooling?
I've heard of it, but I still have my reservations.
Yes, now homeschooling has caused so many questions. Right now, we have so many people, for so many reasons actually, are not taking their children to school, and they decide to keep them at home, or bring a tutor or do it themselves by getting the materials. And many were asking themselves, how efficient is this? Because I can see Uganda is at a high rate adopting this. I have had so many
very high rate, by
high
the way.
rate.
There are so many parents nowadays who homeschool their children.
Yeah, because of the moral decay in schools. Sometimes they're like, my child is going to be exposed to too much out there. It could even be because of the school fees. So many reasons people are like, let me teach my child at school. So there have been questions arising. What are the homeschooling laws of Uganda? Is it even legal to homeschool your neighbor's kid also? Here in Uganda, do the homeschool children join your university? Do homeschool to homeschool, must you do a specific training or a curriculum? For example, ACE. You know, there is a lot of curriculums that have been designed for homeschooling. Uganda is developed.
Yeah, we are.
And then there are also
President Museveni keeps
questions.
saying it.
Yeah. There are questions of, are there taxes to homeschools? So there's so many out there, like, I want to go that way. How do I go about it? Well,
Daphne, this is a good conversation, but I think it will even become better
Oh,
after we
come
first
back.
go for a quick breather and have some more delicious fries. Today we are doing something different
Yes.
because Daphne and I are talking about Uganda's post-independence education journey. And why are we doing that? Because today we are celebrating International Teachers Day, and so it's important that we talk about our education here in
Yes.
Uganda. And also we are about, I think it's next week actually, we are close to clocking 60 years of independence in Uganda. So it's important that we talk about our education system and know what the education system can do in terms of getting better so that we can have a brighter future, according to one of our leaders who said the future in Uganda is bright.
The bright is very future. They don't change his
But
words.
talking about
The
a
bright
bright
is very
future, for some, when it comes to education, especially
Yes.
educating children, the future is bright, basing from homeschooling.
Oh, yes.
Not when it comes to sending your children out in school.
Yes.
What are the advantages of homeschooling, you think?
Well, advantages, I would say, number one is you are sure you are controlling everything that comes at your child. Because when you send your child to an open school, there are so many kids, different ways of upbringing, different mannerisms. And so, in a way, you are protecting your child only if you're also monitoring what they're exposed to when they're at home. And number two is they have a better, what can I call it, concentration level is better as compared to when they're in class. There is this one shouting. No, depending on you, the
That's
teacher.
so.
This one is shouting. This one is doing what?
When
If you can
DSTVs.
control. No, that's why I said if you can control your surroundings.
And the PlayStation
It's time for
and all
school.
that.
It's time for school. Everything is switched off. It's you and your child. It's even good when it comes to monitoring purposes. You monitor the progress of your child because you only have one kid you're dealing with as compared to the many. The teachers have a lot, and sometimes with the shouting and all, they may not even be able to notice that boy in the corner that hasn't risen his hand up the whole day. So before we went in for a breather, we were asking ourselves, I know there are people out there who, like me, have been asking, is it even legal? Is it allowed? Can you educate your neighbor's child as well? Well, for legal status, homeschooling is a growing educational option here in Uganda. Although not yet defined properly by the law, education is compulsory. And according to the National Objective 18 in the Uganda Constitution 1995, education in the Constitution and the Education Act is commonly assumed to mean school attendance. However, the Constitution clearly protects the right of parents to direct the upbringing and education of their children, meaning it's okay for you to decide how your child should learn whatever they are supposed to learn, although it is compulsory that they learn. So if you are going to say my child should stay home and study, you better teach your child. Now, it is a right and a duty of parents to care for and bring up their children. A child is entitled to basic education, which shall be the responsibility of the state and the parents of the child. Now, this reminds me of the time they were arresting parents of kids that were not going to school. I don't know how far that campaign went. They would go door to door. And like now it's school time, so they go door to door and they find a school-going child and the child is not sick, you're in trouble. I love Uganda. We have good strategies, but seeing them through to the end is amazing. So yes, parents are supposed to
You
take...
think they should bring it back?
They should. I am seeing so many kids that are roaming the streets. If you're not taking your child to school, okay, fine, maybe you don't have the education requirements, say the school fees or the books they're asking for. Get your banana leaf and sticks and teach your child at school. I mean at home. If they find you with a kid, the kid should be at least writing down something with a charcoal. Let them learn at least 1, 2, 3. It's important in life. And then number 2, we had someone who was asking, what about if I educate my neighbor's kid? Is it legal? Well, ideally, homeschooling works with nuclear family. Parents instructing their own children at home. That is a private arrangement. When you open your gates to neighboring children, then it becomes a public affair and you will need a license to operate and a signpost. So if you have a neighbor's child in your compound, you don't have a license or a signpost, they should come for you.
What if you go to your neighbor's place and teach the neighbor's child from his or her place?
Nuclear. That is extended family. And then there was a question, if I homeschool my child, can they join university? Because you cannot do university education at home, definitely. There is a point where you have to take your child to public school. And yes, it's been answered. To join universities as a homeschool child in Uganda, some universities offer entry exams, whereas others based on your 12th grade transcripts, that is certification or diploma, and convert them the same way they deal with the children that have studied in international schools. So yes, if you homeschool your child and you're sure you've done a good job, they shall be given exams to test whether you were busy playing or really studying at home. And yes, they can join university. And then the role of a parent in homeschooling setting is not to teach, but rather to supervise. Unless you are a professional, you can only supervise and not teach. Then different curriculums offer specific training on how best to use their products. However, personally, they extend an invitation to you that you should go and get training, or else you are not teaching what should be taught. And if you are a parent and you haven't gotten the training or even the time, you can get a tutor like it is in the developed world. That's why I said Uganda is developed. If we are having homeschooling, are you still doubting that we are a developed nation? Anyways, there was another question about taxes. There are no taxes to homeschools, neither does the government pay the parents
I should start a school that does homeschooling.
There you go. That is only if you have training.
And I get a license.
We don't want people that are half-baked. We don't want half-baked
training.
students.
But on homeschooling,
yes,
it definitely has its advantages. I like the fact that as parents, we are giving the opportunity to educate our children.
Yes.
It gives an opportunity for the parent and the child bond to continue to grow.
Yes.
Because remember, when we send our children to boarding schools or even day schools,
Yes.
they spend a lot of time in school and less time at home. And so it's good for a parent and a child to have that time together, and for
Only
a
if they are
parent to
trained.
educate exactly the child. However, my chief reservation on it is education is wholesome. It's not just numbers and letters. It's not 1, 2, 3, A, B, C,
Yes.
D, E, F. The advantage of being in
A public
an
school,
education system where you are actually, as a child, you are relating with other children is because you are not just, school is not just to get your certificate and then go and get a job, but you're also learning how to deal with people in society and in the community, how to deal with someone who angers you, who is from a different area than you. And we remember, this is a big country. We have so many tribes, so many languages, so and people have different characters. How will I deal with Daphne? How do I deal with Shama? And that helps you become well suited for life in the marketplace, because remember, now we live in a global economy where the world is open, and you have to be able to deal with different facets, different types of people, different characters, if you are going to thrive in the marketplace.
Definitely.
So for me, that's my chief reservation, that homeschooling may not give you that opportunity to learn how to relate with others. Plus, also, you are stealing the opportunity for this child to make friends.
That is
because
true.
If you're homeschooling, you're definitely going to, that child will be friends with the neighbors and the relatives. But is that enough of a sample space in terms of broadening this child's horizons? So for me, that's what those are my two reservations on it, that you are not put in a place where you learn where you learn how to relate with other people, and then because a lot thriving in the marketplace comes with having networking, and networking comes from knowing people. That's basically what it is, that you know someone who knows someone who knows someone. If I want if I want to do very nice makeup, I go to Daphne. If I want to
if you want to know how to hire a doctor, you come to Daphne.
Operator, I talk to Shama. But if I have not been in a place where I can meet Daphne and Shama, different people who might not be my relatives, then that might be a problem. So I don't know how homeschools deal with that, if they have any trips, if they have any tours, or if they have any events where they get to meet other children, maybe who are homeschooling, so that they can have that network.
Well, they do, especially under certain umbrellas. I am not going to disclose, but there's so many umbrellas right now here in Uganda that carry out homeschooling. They can come to you wherever you are, but because they have different children in different places, they easily connect. They have time when they throw parties, when there is mingle, and then you study each other, because they told me it's very important for a child's development, personality development, like you were saying. Different people have different temperaments, and unless you are exposed to certain conditions or circumstances, or even people, because people bring out either the best or the worst of you, and if you know there is a bad trait in you, you can easily work on it when you know it's there. But if you are segregated, set aside from the rest, it's very hard for you to develop who you are as a person. So yes, it's very, very important. Another one told me that they take their children to the park but this is Uganda, but it's okay. So they take their children to the park so they can meet other people they don't know, so that they're out of the monotony of home and the neighbors. They go see new faces and they see how they react with these children. It's also good for building self-esteem. If your child keeps indoors and then they do not believe in themselves, it's what we're coming from, in the 1960s, that place of, can I do this, cowardizing. But when you are challenged by another person, or maybe someone throws a blow at you, even without the box, which is very, very important. It's one of the things that they are still working on. It's one of the challenges, because the child has to be wholesome. Remember, schools have core curricular activities as well, like football, drama, and this child may not be able to participate in the same and not develop that skill unless you as a parent has keen interest of the talent and that your child has.
That's the advantage of going in schools where there are many children. And
they force you to do it. You have no choice.
I was not forced, but you
yeah, I was
you,
beaten.
okay, for some of them, but you get to understand the skills that you have or the gifting that you have.
Yes.
Because for me, when it comes to oratory skills, I thank God that I was in spaces in schools where I enjoyed debating,
yes.
where I performed poetry in MDD, and I really loved that. And like you said, it gives you the self-confidence because you discover, oh, God has given me this gift.
Even
This is
this
a
I
gift
can
I can
do.
have, and
Yes.
this is something that I can grow in. So it's very important that our children also have those opportunities. But I would like to celebrate our teachers for doing a valiant job in ensuring that our nation keeps developing. So as we celebrate International Teachers Day today, we say we thank you for being instruments of change and transformation, as transformation begins with teachers, which is the theme for today's celebration. Thank you for joining us on Issues at Hand today. Of course, Issues at Hand is proudly brought to you by Protea Hotel. Please make a reservation and booking and enjoy a luxurious, restful experience at Protea Hotel Entebbe. Now, Issues at Hand will return on Friday, and I know that we are going to tackle a great issue together. For now, God richly bless you.